Hey, WoW TCG community, it's Broderick. We're doing another deck tech today. This one's going to be a raid deck tech, and specifically we're doing it on Sylvanas. So, it's a DPS hunter style deck. Maybe you feel like being undead, or having like a weird plot, or maybe being a girl or whatever, or just being a hunter. So, this is maybe the deck for you. So this deck is actually started by Nathan, or Renoir 2005 from the Texas group. You guys might know him. He shared with me this deck, and he hasn't put it out yet. So here we go. Let's share it. I've made some changes to it. Nathan had it a little more all in on the undead, which is better for the flavor, but I've made a few changes here, so let's go over it. Starting off, we have the undead DPS allies, and we've got this undead synergy pile down here. That's really the main core of this deck, is a bunch of undead dudes and then a reason to be playing undead dudes, because otherwise you just play the best of everything, right, instead of one tribe. So let's go over the undead synergy, and then we'll dive into why we picked these dudes. Let's start off with, actually, you know what, let's go look at the hero. This is Dark Lady Sylvanas Windrunner, 28 health hero. If we flip her over, it's pay 5 to flip for permanent flip. Song of Sylvanas. Sylvanas and allies you control have Assault 1, so +1 attack during your turn. You're going to be swinging with Sylvanas a lot. This is a deck where the hero does a lot of damage. And Assault 1 on the allies is pretty huge, but it costs 5 to flip, so that's a big deal. I mean, we are unlikely to be wanting to flip on turn 5, so this is probably a later play down the road. But keeping that in mind, let's go take a look at the Undead Synergy. Start off with Legguards of the Legion, 3 mana, male leggings. When this armor enters play, you name Undead. So you name Undead, and you pay 1 less to play Undead allies, and then your hero has Assault 1 for each Undead ally. This is going to come up. So for only 3 mana, sometimes you can curve out like 1-drop, 2-drop, or even just 2-drop into this. So you'll have at least one on Assault 1 from whatever dude you have in play. It just makes these guys much cheaper to throw out, and by giving you Assault 1 for every undead you have, it encourages you to keep pumping out dudes so you can swing in with your hero. You can also use your hero as an ally trading tool. You know, like if you have Assault 2 or 3, you can basically just start... It's like having a super Broderick trigger, so you just start clearing off the raid allies, tokens, whatever it needs to be. Just keep your health in mind. Alright, so that was the leggings, the Legguards of the Legion. There's 3 of these in the deck. Fluid Death costs 4. There's 2 of these in our deck. When an ally you control deals combat damage to a hero, add a depth counter to this item. Your hero has Assault 1 for each depth counter. So again, every time an ally deals damage to an enemy hero, this thing gets +1. So eventually, with just this card in play, after 2 or 3 turns, you can be swinging for like 10 with just your hero. And there's only 2 because it's a little slow, and it doesn't really do anything the turn it hits the board unless all your allies are going into the enemy hero. It doesn't work if your allies are trading against other allies, but hey, this thing has the ability to be really useful and go nuts later on in a raid, which is something that we want to have. We want to have a bunch of permanents that are really hard to get rid of and keep stacking value. So this can have us swing for a bunch, soak in this, and then she gives us Assault 1 on her own, so you're seeing a theme here. Next up, we've got Windrunner's Heartseeker. This is a 5-cost crossbow, 0 strike cost, and 0 damage. It's long range, so you don't take damage back. When this weapon enters play, you put 2 1/1 undead ally tokens into play. This weapon has +1 attack for each undead you control. So right off the bat, 2 undeads come in play, plus you yourself, you are an undead. You're an undead hunter. So this means that this comes into play with a strike cost of 0 and does 3 damage on the first turn you play it. It can grow, obviously, depending on how many allies you have. We only have 2 of these in the deck. It's expensive. You don't really want to clog your hand with 5-drops. It's great to play on turn 5, and you really want to have it later on in the game. Especially great for trading because of long range. Again, just helps us with our undead synergy. You can go up on these cards if you'd like, but this is one of the reasons we're playing some undead. Another reason we are playing undead is because of the Will of the Forsaken power. So let's go take a look right here. He's kind of goofy looking. Alright, Nathan, this is just a random 2-drop 2/3, but the power Will of the Forsaken is why this dude's in our deck. This ally can't leave play unless it has fatal damage or 0 health. So if your opponent plays a card that says destroy all allies, it simply does not work on this creature because he has Will of the Forsaken. Or if your opponent plays a bounce all creatures to your hand, or put all creatures, like destroy all creatures, put them into your graveyard, or shuffle this creature into your deck, put them into your resource row, anything like that. Actually, the resource row one does work because he's not leaving play. But bottom line, he's got to die to take damage. So a large amount of boss removal no longer works on these types of allies. The sweepers hit him pretty hard, so like 2 or 3 damage, frostbolt volleys, those types of things, they're going to eat these guys up. But a lot of removal is completely dodged by them. So this deck is going to be a real pain in the butt for the raid boss, depending on which raid you're in. So that's the Will of the Forsaken power, basically a dodge most sweepers and dodge many types of specific removal. Now let's take a look at our DPS allies. These are all undead. We got 4 Brodericks. You know him from Classic. He's just cheap, and he'll help you, swing for 1 or 2 more. Swinging for 1 or 2 more is not going to be a big deal in a raid, so Broderick's really an easy card to just throw out if you ever decide that you want something better. But his value, he should be able to trade with something and give your hero 1 attack for like 10 turns. This dude, just 2 mana 2/3 with good power. Sivandra Darklust, she's a 3 mana 3/3 with Will of the Forsaken. She has a weird power though. When she enters play, draw a card, then destroy an ally in your party. The way this works is if all the allies in your party have Will of the Forsaken, you can't do that effect. You just can't destroy any allies, so you basically ignore it. But if there's even one ally in your party that can be destroyed, that doesn't have Will of the Forsaken, then she has to basically eat that guy. Like if you have a Broderick in play, and you play her, she just kills the Broderick. Okay, so anyway, it's just 3 mana 3/3. You want to have an overwhelming, or try to at least have an overwhelming number of Will of the Forsaken allies. Otherwise the deck just, doesn't work. We've got some of this Will of the Forsaken synergy with 4 more Dethvirs, 4 mana 4/5 with Will of Forsaken. He also has a really relevant text. If another hero or ally in your party would be dealt damage, you may have it dealt to Dethvir instead. That works at will, like instant speed anytime. So if your opponent does play, say, a Frostbolt Volley, and you have a Dethvir out, and maybe one of these, and maybe a Broderick, you can redirect all the damage that's going to Broderick and to Voran. So you can just say, all that damage comes here, and then all that damage comes here. So let's say it's 3 damage here, 3 damage here. You just put all 3 on him, or 3 here, and then 3 from him puts it up to 6, and then the Frostbolt Volley itself would hit him, so he's taking 9. But all those effects go on the stack at the same time. And so you can just basically pull the damage off of them so they don't even get hit. Sure, he dies, but you can save your entire board that way. So he's extremely hard to get rid of. He also, if your team has Will of the Forsaken, he basically prevents them being swept away at all, because damage-based sweepers won't work while he's around. He'll just sack himself, and then Will of the Forsaken prevents the rest of the sweepers. Alexi Barov, we only have 2 of these. He's a decent payoff for costing 5. He does nothing the turn he comes into play, but for a 5 mana 5/5 undead, at the start of your turn, put 3 Peasant Ally tokens into play with Ferocity. So they're 1/1s with Ferocity. But at the end of your opponent's turn, you destroy them. I don't really have a way to get rid of to prevent the tokens from dying. And again, he does nothing the turn he comes down. But being able to spit out 3 1/1s every turn is huge, especially if you can pump up the 1/1s with Sylvanas, his hero power. And a lot of times, if you're going to be getting this guy by turn 5, like, it's probably not turn 5. Like, there's only 2 of these in the deck. You probably have a lot more things to do. This is more of a multi-spell deck where you cast multiple spells for like turns 1 through 8. You don't just slam a big fatty every turn. So it's likely that the game will have slowed down. You can flip, and so by flipping, allies you control of Assault 2. So this guy will spit out 3 2/1s every turn. And there's other ways to buff the undead damage in the deck, so we'll get there. But that's your main undead DPS ally core. They don't all have Will of Forsaken. Modify that if you want. Next up, let's go to utility allies. Twilight Assassin, he's not an undead. In fact, he's Blood Elf, so at least he's on the same side. We get it. But it's 3 mana 2/2. Draw a card for every player unless they discard a card. This is just a huge draw house for raids. In raids, I mean, this is usually like a 3 or 4 for 1. Occasionally, the raid boss will discard a card, so you don't draw, but even then, it's like you played a 2/2 and your boss had to discard, you still drew 2 or 3 cards. You could go up if you need, but I find that in raids, running out of cards is just death. So we have 3 of these, 3 mana, draw 4, something like that, plus a body, great card. No way to reduce it, it's just good. Morik, here's another 3 mana dork that just draws you cards. He's orc, so sorry for no undead synergy, but 3 mana 2/2, ferocity. When he attacks, every player draws a card. Your raid will love this. Having everyone else draw from you is great. I mean, essentially, you put him into play, you attack, maybe you hit the boss, maybe you trade. Either way, your team goes up card advantage of like 3 or 4 every turn until he dies. So, pretty sweet deal. Mr. Fungus Face McGillicutty. He's an undead priest. He's a 3 mana 3/3. When he is destroyed, you may destroy target ability. He's not exactly super active. He doesn't push a lot of damage, but just being able to kill abilities is really helpful instead of making your allies do it. It's nice to bring your own feet to the table, see if you can help out. So, he's only a 2 of in this deck. Not exactly something we want every turn, but it's great to have. Plus, he can get his cost reduced by the trousers or by the Legguards. So maybe we play a 2-mana 3/3. It's not bad. Sister Rot, she's a 5-mana 5/2, so pretty much terrible stats, but when she enters play, you may destroy target ability, and she's undead, so you may cast her for 4. Just a third way to kill abilities, at least it does it when she enters the battlefield. Silencing Shot. This is not an ally. What are you doing here? Let's move it down here. Well, let's go ahead and go over it. Silencing Shot. This is a 4-mana instant. You may exhaust one of your range weapons rather than pay Silencing Shot's cost. Your hero deals 2 range damage to target hero or ally. If you target a hero's controller can't play abilities this turn, and you may interrupt an ability. Blah, blah, blah. What does that mean? So you can either pay for and interrupt an ability and deal 2 damage to the hero. So basically, your opponent plays a spell, you can pay for, shoot them for 2, and interrupt their ability. Or you can choose to just tap a weapon or exhaust a weapon that you haven't used yet. That's one way to do this. Just untap the weapon, and then you can Silencing Shot. Just tapping the weapon is for paying the cost. So it's basically a 0-mana counterspell. You also silence them for the turn. So you hit them, you do 2 damage to them, and you interrupt their ability, and then they can't play any abilities for the rest of the turn. So technically, if your opponent has a bunch of basic speed abilities, which means like non-instant speed, sorcery speed, you can Silencing Shot on their upkeep, just shoot them, and then they can't play abilities that turn. And I know it kind of seems like a waste of Silencing Shot, but maybe your opponent has a board wipe that's like, a sorcery, pay 5, destroy all creatures, and it's just not working out for your teammates, so they say, hey dude, Silencing Shot him on the upkeep, and then he doesn't get to play, and that usually works out well for you. Moving over here to the weapons, we've got some sweet range weapons. We showed you this one earlier. There's 2 of this. That's the 5-drop one that puts some undeads into play. We've also got this one. I'd never seen this card until Nathan showed me this. It's pretty sweet, and you don't see hunters in raids that much, so this is Final Voyage, a 2-mana weapon. It's a 2-mana crossbow with long range. It costs 2 to swing with and does 0 damage, but this weapon has Assault 1 for each card in opposing hands. That's pretty good. So bosses, and a lot of times their hand size is like 10, so there's a lot of cases where this weapon will be you play it on turn 2 or something, it just sits there for a turn, but eventually the boss will have like 5 to 10 cards in hand. So you're paying 2 to deal 5 or 10 repeatable damage every turn. It's long range too, so you can just clear off their allies. Because it costs 2 to strike with every turn, you might also have other things you don't want to do that turn. Like maybe you want to play a 4-drop and you can't pay the strike cost. There's not a lot of synergy in here to get rid of that. You just have to pay the cost. So that means this thing is untapped quite often if you don't have the mana ready, which means it's great to use with Silencing Shot if you just need to leave an untapped weapon in play. Whereas this costs 0, like why would you ever not attack with it unless you're specifically leaving up this interaction. Next up we have Reload. Sweet picture there, right? I remember that armor back from BC. Reload's a 1-mana ability. Ready your hero and one of your range weapons. If you ready a weapon this way, you pay 10 less the next time you strike with it this turn. So basically just pay 1, untap your hero and a weapon, swing for free again. Really easy way to finish off a boss, considering this can swing for like 7 or 8 or something huge. You can just pay 2, hit them for 10. Pay 1, this costs 0 to swing with, hit them for 10 again. You could do something similar here, but you're probably realistically hitting them for more like 4 or 5. But another big deal is since we have the Legguards, we have Assault 1 for every undead ally in play. So we might have more like Assault 2 or 3 plus a weapon. And if our hero's flipped, that's another Assault 1 from ourself. So it'd be like Assault 1 here, Assault maybe 2 or 3 here. So that puts us up to 4. If we have a dead Broderick, that's like Assault 5. If we have a weapon, that's like another 4 or 5. From this one, maybe 6 or 7 here. So the attack goes up pretty crazy. So Reload isn't just about resetting your weapon. It's about getting another punch in with Muscular Sylvanas. Hit him. That's kind of what you're doing with Sylvanas in this deck. Not to mention the whole barrel thing. This thing stacks up pretty high, and getting a reset and getting to swing again if maybe you're swinging for like 15 with just this card alone. This is what a raid is. We have some strong combinations, and this is basically a combo card. Not that useful on its own, but sometimes you just need to deal like 30 or 40 damage to a boss, and this deck has that ability to. Next up, Piercing Shots. It's kind of a cool art, yeah. Except like I just don't picture Night Elf as like the one dude holding off the shield, but whatever. Piercing Shots is a 2-mana ability. It's Marksmanship, which fills in with the rest of the deck. Ongoing damage that heroes and allies you control would deal is unpreventable. At the end of your turn, if an opposing hero was dealt 5 or more damage, you draw a card. So for only 2 mana, this thing does a lot. I would expect this to cost a little bit more. Although it kind of does nothing on its own, so maybe I take that back. But for having only 3 of these in the deck, the part about the damage being unpreventable, it might matter. It matters if there's like a boss, or if the boss has certain allies that are really hard to get through, and they have unpreventable, and it makes trading just a nightmare, and like the whole objective just becomes how do we kill those allies. And this is a legitimate way to just walk in and say, I've got piercing shots, let's just kill them like normal. That works really well. And then at the end of your turn, if you shoot for 5, if the opposing hero took 5 or more, you draw a card. So this is just another draw engine to add on. That once you put it in play for 2 mana, this may draw you 5 cards over the course of the game, or many more. And again, you have a lot of cheaper spells, a lot of 2s, 3s, and 4s, a few 5s, but your deck is trying to stay low to the ground. And so having cheaper things like this that you can slot in between turns, like maybe you want to take a turn off, you really don't need to hit this turn, might be a good turn to slot in Piercing Shot. Because even your allies have the ability to trigger the damage. And it also makes your allies unpreventable, and not just your hero. So it gives you a lot of flexibility in a draw engine. Next up, Legacy of the Legion. This is a 6 drop. I only have a single one of these in the deck. You know, tweak those numbers as you will. Pay 6, put a 5/5 Protector and a 5/5 Ferocity token into play. So 2 different tokens, both 5/5s. And they're demons, so they look pretty sweet. But pay 6, get 10/10 worth of power. Some of it's immediate. Really effective, especially because sometimes no one has protectors. Like your deck doesn't have any, that's for sure. So sometimes there's just no deck that has any protectors. So that's something you could consider adding if you think this deck needs a little more help protecting its allies. But for 6 mana, it's a great tempo play on turn 6. Just does a lot. Viewless Wings. You have a single copy. This is a 5 mana back armor cloth. Allies you control have Assault 1 for each ally you control. So if you have 4 dudes in play, each dude will have +4 attack. So like this item on its own on a board of 3 or 4 guys adds like 9 or 16 attack for 1 card. You know, if you ever just played a 5 mana spell and it did 16 damage, that's kind of what this does. Has a good synergy with Alexi Barov, huge synergy. Even if your board is empty, you can just play him on turn 5, on turn 6, slap the Viewless Wings afterwards, and you've got 4 tokens that are all running around with +4 attack, so they're all swinging for 5, and then even more if you flip Sylvanas, so there's some more token synergy. And we've got more tokens from Windrunner's Heartseeker, so I'm liking the ability to kind of switch the in-game plan up a little bit by having a couple of these 1-ups. Alright, that's the core of the deck. Let's look at the resources, and let's get out of here. Resources, we got 1 Undercity. I mean, you gotta have at least 1, right? Sylvanas. Undercity's just not that good in raids, so we're gonna have 1. It's there. It can it basically can tap to remove a dude from a graveyard every turn, and an undead can heal too. It's great that you can heal your own allies with it, but if you've played a raid, you know your allies are probably just gonna be full trading a lot of the time. So just 1 of those. Oh, Minions of the Shadow Council. I know the art's kind of hard to read on this one, the text, but it's basically you have to pay 3 to complete it, and you draw 3. So pay 3, draw 3 for a quest is nuts. But the drawback is that you have to have 3 counters on it first, and you get a counter whenever an opposing ally is destroyed. So as soon as at least 3 allies are destroyed, opposing allies are destroyed, then this thing's active. So you want to get this down as early as possible in case you're killing tokens on early turns. So we have a pay 3, draw 3 quest. Legendary Heroes is a pay 1, draw 1 quest. Most of the opponent's raid decks cannot interact with this, so it's just a pay 1, draw 1. Like, that's it. Sweet. Nice card. So this is an easy card to slot in. Like, on those turns where maybe we don't have enough mana to shoot and draw, or, you know, you want to play something, but you only have enough mana to shoot and draw, you know, you have like 3 mana left over and you want to pay 2 to shoot, and then you have 1 mana. Like, what do I do with 1 mana? This is the kind of card that you find can often fit into those situations. So it's really easy to use. To Torek's Assault. If an opposing hero was dealt damage this turn by an ally in your party, pay 1 to complete this quest. Draw a card. Torek's Assault does not synergize with your own hero damage. It has to be an ally. And they have to hit the opposing hero, not an ally. So you have to remember that you're hitting their hero. But just another pay 1, draw 1 card. You know, conditions are a little more specific, but you know, hitting the enemy hero is not exactly hard to achieve in this deck. So that puts us at 7 quests that are pay 1, draw 1. 4 of these quests that are pay 3, draw 3. So this one costs 3 to activate. This is another draw engine that costs 3 to activate. This is another draw engine that costs 3 to activate. And this is a draw engine that costs 2 to activate. You get, I mean, how many is that? 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 18, 19, 20, 21. So a third of the deck is really there just to help you draw the other 2/3 of the deck. And it will. And you're going to be getting a bunch of resources, and you're going to have turns where you have a bunch of quests in play, but because you have this guy and Morik, there's no reason to be using your quests when you can just be putting pressure on the table and refilling your hand at the same time. Anyways, that's the deck. I hope you have fun with it. Be Sylvanas, be buff, hit some people, punch, use your bows and all that stuff. Play some dudes, make the raid boss a little unhappy with Will the Forsaken. And then use Dethvir to eat up the board, the damage-based sweepers. Got a little bit of utility in there, lots of draw, a little bit of ability destruction, and even some interrupts. Alright, let's take a look at the sideboard. What a sideboard in a raid, I know, how weird. Really, the sideboard's just there so you guys can already have some cards that have the art on the back of the card ready to go in case you decide to slot these in. Plenty of ways to tweak this deck, so do what you want, have some fun. This is basically utility, a couple more dudes, and then the option of pets. We don't really have any pets in the deck, so that's probably where you're like, what? It's a hunter, where's the pets at, bro? Go ahead, put some pets in there. Go crazy with it. But let's look at what we have so far. Silent Fang, it's a sword. It's only gold. You pay 2 and it sits in play, then you can pay 2 and sack an ability. I really hope you're never punching with this thing, especially with that sad Night Elf behind there. Disrupting Shot. This is a 3 mana. You deal 1 range damage to a target, and if you targeted a hero, you interrupt an ability. It's kind of like Silencing Shot, but a little bit worse. Doesn't silence him for the turn, only does 1 damage, but it only costs 3. If you find that you have to interrupt the raid boss constantly, then maybe add the 4th Silencing Shot, maybe add some more Disrupting Shots, and go for it. Have some fun. Feign Death. 3 mana Feign Death. It's instant. You play if your hero is defending or is the target of an opposing card or effect. Interrupt all cards and effects, then end the turn. What? It's kind of one of those abilities you read, and you're not exactly sure. And I think even the art's funny. Like the Night Elf is clearly still alive in this picture. If you can see through the low pixel count, but interrupt all cards and effects, then end the turn. So if it's the enemy boss's turn, you could bring in Feign Deaths, and if they ever attack you or your hero is the target of an effect, it could be a really simple effect like target hero takes 2 damage. Well, you can just Feign Death, you don't take the damage, and then you end the boss's turn, and he can't play any cards. So, because it also interrupts the stack too. So if something is happening bad on the stack, you can just cast Feign Death and ruin the stack, like no matter what the boss has going on. It's pretty funny. Sideboard, more Fungus Face to help get rid of abilities, another Sister Rot. Arathi Basin's just another draw engine. Maybe you want every 5 cards, doesn't count resources that you play, it's just casting spells. So every 5 casts you get a free draw for 1 mana. I have this in a lot of my raid decks, works pretty fine. Avatar of the Wild, great mana sink. I found that in raids it often feels underwhelming because it doesn't have a lot of synergy. It's just good. So if you want a real good card in that deck, go ahead and throw Avatar in there. Looking at these pets, we've got Fang, 2 mana, 2/4. He kind of is an all-star from Classic in the Werewolf deck. Being a wolf helps. He pumps your board up. He's overstated. He's a protector. Throw him in there if you want. Zip, just a 2 mana, 2/3 Ferocity. You don't see him a lot. It's just nice to have Ferocity on an efficient body. Buzz. He's a 5 mana, 5/5. When he enters play, he can destroy an equipment, and when he dies, he can destroy a weapon. I don't suppose that's your job in the raids to destroy equipment, but maybe one day it is, so there's Buzz. And then Tesla. Tesla is a 4 mana, 3/3, but is really a 4 mana, 5/3 that attacks when you put him on your turn. It's got Ferocity, so 4 mana, swing for 5, keep doing it every turn. This pet's pretty good. If you just want some slamming Ferocity DPS, this might be the pet for you. That's something I didn't think about. This deck does not have a lot of Ferocity. but it does have a lot of weapons from your hand. So it's really more of a planning deck that you just keep putting Undead out and plan where Sylvanas' attacks are going to go, because that's oftentimes the hardest hitting thing on the table is the Sylvanas. I hope you enjoyed this deck, and make sure to give Renoir or Nathan some credit for it. He definitely did a good job, and I made a few improvements or modifications. I mean, how bold for me to say improvements, right? But if you're welcome to cut the deck apart, repaste it, go full Undead, or maybe switch over to go more weapon based. Maybe get as many of these as you can in there, and have some fun. Good luck.